Hey, Lauren. Hey, David. How are you guys tonight?
I'm
great.
good.
Good.
Doing great. How are
Good.
you?
I'm doing great too. I think it's a good idea that we get together and maybe talk to the voters, just in a regular conversation about who we are, why
Yeah.
we want to run, and just kind of introduce ourselves to the public. Does that sound
Sounds
good
fine
you?
to me.
It's a
Okay.
great idea. Yeah.
All right. So I'll start if you want.
Yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
Okay, what I was envisioning, I'm sorry, one of the reasons that I'm running is that I really feel strongly about what is happening to the kids in this school district, probably more than just this school district, all across the country. But I really feel strongly that they're not being allowed to be kids, that we're pushing them into things that they're not mature enough to understand or that they're ready for. I've also got issues about finances in this
Yeah.
district.
Same.
Same. And I think we need to kind of maybe talk about it, put a halt to some things, or try to put a halt to some things, kind of slow it down a little bit.
I absolutely agree. I think I'm on par with all of those issues. Keeping the kids safe. My kids have been coming home with different stories that don't align with my religious values, or really always what's on the curriculum. Also, it seems like there's a lot of underhanded ways that things are getting snuck into the curriculum that I think is just not being transparent. The money thing is huge. I mean, everyone's seen on the news the things about the superintendent in the past, the 78 million on over budget on the school. I do understand that this role unilaterally does not break contracts. It only has so much reach, but as a whole, we can be putting a pause on things, really playing the devil's advocate on the policy that's currently written and seeing how it failed, strengthening that. And I think there's a lot of new projects that are just still steamrolling out the door, and there's so much strain with parents and other budgets that the taxpayers are still questioning, that feel like they don't have answers to. So I think we do need to put a pause button and really scrutinize things that would be coming through.
I agree. I think probably one of the big things that I've seen on and off, but became sort of clear to me back when my daughter was in 10th grade, that there is propaganda that's being pushed through the school. And the reason I know this is because of books she brought home. And I just happened to see the book on the dining table, and I asked her about it, and she says, well, they're making me read that. And I'm like, what do you mean they're making you read that? She says, well, they insisted that I read this book. So I picked the book up and I started reading through it, and turned out that the book is filled with left-wing, ideological, stereotype type propaganda in the book. Now, this isn't like talking about pornography in the school library, but in some ways I see this as more insidious. Because here's my daughter she's on one of these individual plans for education, which she liked. But I think in some ways, the librarians, and I did discover that it wasn't the teacher, but it was the librarian that pushed this forward.
Interesting.
And as a result of that, it made me wonder what else they're doing. Because she did say that the librarian was very emphatic that she take this particular book home. And I'm wondering if they're targeting these kids that are in these individual programs, right? Maybe they think that they're an easy target to take advantage of, but it really bothered me a great deal. And so that's one of the reasons, certainly, why I wanted to get involved with stopping the kinds of things that we're seeing in education today and try to really improve that overall.
I'm seeing a lot of similarities with the librarians and English. Yeah, so it's interesting dynamic.
You guys bring up really good points, because if you hadn't got involved and you weren't paying attention, I don't think anybody would know what's actually going on in the schools. I know I don't have kids in the schools, so I have to rely on parents, and I read all the emails, and I really get upset sometimes from some of the things that they tell me that go on. I understand too that one parent is one parent, and that doesn't mean that everybody is having the same experience. However, what I want for these kids is for them to have the best educational experience that they can have. They only get one crack at grade school and high school. And I really think that it should be the best situation ever, free of ideological indoctrination, bullying, all kinds of things that they should be able to be kids, to study, to decide what their life's course going to be, if they can make their decision in high school, what their life course is going to be for the rest of their lives.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's something that as a school district we can do better. I mean, we got on the upside, we have a lot of nice programs. Like we know that not all kids learn didactically, and so we have these programs where you can go to school and get credit and become an apprentice plumber. Fantastic!
That is,
I
yeah.
love that. They didn't have that when I was in high school. Probably not when you were in high school either. I think
Yeah.
it's wonderful that we're doing that kind of thing. But at the same time, we still got to prepare and do things for the kids that do learn didactically and make that better.
Yeah.
At least that's what I wish for this district.
One of the things that comes to mind is when I say push the pause button and reevaluate these programs, and maybe always ask ourselves, what are we trying to solve,
Mhm.
and how is it being valuable? There's a lot more opportunity with some basic skills and things like that on how to maybe do certain things in your house. It could be a number of things when you talk about the skilled learning. I mean, I think that would be great. So we need to be careful about let's just not expand, let's make sure it's valuable, and so if there's some pulling back a little bit and reorganizing, I think that would be wise. Yeah.
I think you just had a great segue into research-based curriculum.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I haven't been involved with the district for 50 years, and I'm not sure we always did that. I think that maybe if we push a little bit more for the educators to do that we'd see some results. I certainly hope so. But I know that there's certain things that happen that to me, my first question is, what does it do to help the kids learn? What does it do to make math, science, all the things that they're learning better? And I'm not sure that they can answer that question for all things that are being taught to the kids.
Yeah,
The kids are being exposed
Something that I would say to that is there were 3 different teachers actually over the course of the last couple of years I've talked to. One this was going back 2 years, that teacher had just recently retired. Another teacher was in the district.
Mhm.
Another one was planning on retiring the next year. And they were all talking about, and I just mentioned this before this tape started, the issue of what they call social emotional learning, which in our school it's the leader in me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing it up is because all 3 of these teachers shared with me that they didn't like it. That they didn't like the fact that they were being called upon to be psychologists and wasting time in their classroom, not doing the job that they were hired to do, but instead embarking upon this plan where they're supposed to do these things. And most of them didn't really understand even how to do it.
That's a great point. I don't think teachers are really even allowed to teach their basics. They're expected to do so much more now, and
Right.
that deserves some evaluation.
It does. I agree.
Because they're stretched so thin, and yeah, I think that there's certain skill sets, and so no one should be made to feel bad if they're not meant to be a psychologist.
Well, they're not trained to do that,
yeah,
right?
and
They admit to it's like, I'm a teacher. I'm not here to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I'm not trained to do that. It's not a good usage of my time, nor is it a good usage of the students' time, and yet we're doing that every single day.
I think for me, my perspective on that is because some of these things are the parents' responsibility, and some things need to be cared for in the home.
For sure.
Maybe some other things need to be in a separate appointment or after school, but it's all being put on the teachers and the administration.
Yeah, I
so
think
that's a lot of
if a
pressure.
teacher spots a particular troublesome
Sure.
kid, instead of trying to handle that in class as somehow their mentor or whatever, they should be saying, I'm not equipped to deal with this, but we have resources, we'll refer you. Instead
Yeah.
of trying to become the kid's psychologist and their teacher and
Their parent.
everything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
their parent.
Yeah.
They have no business doing it, and most of them know that. They're like, I'm not here to do that.
Yeah.
But we're making them do it because
Establishing some boundaries
Exactly.
sounds nice. Yeah.
So if we're not going to do that, then I think we kind of have a problem in terms of how the time is being used in the classroom.
Yeah, let the
Yeah.
teachers teach and let the kids learn.
Yeah.
But on a little bit of a personal level, do you guys want to get into who you are and why, or your the rest of what brought you here,
Yeah.
what you've done before you?
I'm just an
Decided
old
to run.
retired guy.
He likes to say that, but
Sounds nice, yeah.
I'm not going to let you get by that easy.
Why not?
Yeah. Lauren?
Well, for me, I've just been a wife and a mom and a full-time career woman, but I just feel like with my walk in life and just continuing to support my family and just learning about the things that's going on in the school, I feel a calling to step forward and try to do what's best for not just my kids, but for the community. This is really beyond just me and my family. This is definitely a bigger picture item, and I just want to help in any way that I can. I think one thing maybe people don't know about me is that I'm extremely compassionate. I do have very set values, but by no means does that mean that I'm callous or that I'm not wanting to hear someone's perspective. So I think that's very important for everyone to know.
Okay, old retired guy.
Yeah.
You've done more than that. Tell us.
Born, bred, and raised in St. Louis. Kind of interesting that I went down the pathway of the fine arts when I was raised in a household of scientists. My mother was a botanist. My
Wow.
father was an internationally known molecular biologist. He actually pioneered the molecular biology program at Monsanto Corp. That was
Wow.
his idea from the jump.
Wow.
And no matter what you think of them now, I know
Right.
that.
They stood on the shoulders of giants.
Well, and my father took very seriously, back in the 60s, they were talking about, famines and not being able to feed the world. And he took that seriously. He wanted to find new ways of farming and producing food and so forth. So that's the household I grew up in. We literally had Nobel laureates going through my house for dinner, and I had no idea that they were, these famous people.
Education's
Yeah.
all over this, yeah.
It was a phenomenal education, and it was just sort of accidental on my part because I just happened to be there, right? But my father was a remarkable guy, so was my mother, and I grew up going into the arts, and frankly, that sort of expanded all over the place. I wound up doing everything from sculpture to aerospace
Wow.
during the course of my career, so.
Very diverse.
Unfortunately, I had to retire early because of back problems. And as I've shared with you guys before, part of the reason why I'm here tonight is the fact that retiring early left me a lot of free time. And it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do with that? And so I filled that up with doing a lot of reading, mostly in history initially. And as I began to realize the fact that a lot of the history that I had learned, especially in school, a lot of it was wrong, just flat out wrong. And it made me really wonder what was going on with the educational systems. And I began to dive into reading about that from a variety of different perspectives. How did we arrive here? What are the things that happened? How long has this been going on? And the findings are kind of shocking.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I wound up, here in the whole educational space.
You're a hard act to follow. My story isn't quite that interesting. I was born and bred in North St. Louis County and had 3 brothers, and they weren't, what's the word I want to use? You know how you always have this picture of older brothers being so kind and lovable? No, that isn't exactly what happened. I mean, they were good kids, but oh my heavens, I had to fight to survive at times. So that's where I learned.
Were you the baby?
Almost.
Almost.
Till they had my little brother.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I was surrounded by males fighting, alpha males, all the time, wrestling. I just tried to, stay out of the way and not get hurt. I found the most perfect man for me. I married him, had a couple kids, and then at some point in time decided I wanted to get a little bit more education. And that was the wrong thing to do. No, I shouldn't say that. So I went and got a degree in accounting, and worked at McDonnell Douglas for 9 years, and then went back and got an MBA. Went into pharmaceutical sales, did that whole route for a few years, and then went back to school and got a degree in nursing. So I guess you could say I like school,
Yeah,
I hope
apparently.
so.
obviously.
Yeah.
But I think I'm done. I was thinking, some years ago about going back. And
What years were you at Mac?
that doesn't matter.
The only reason I was asking
You were
is-
probably in diapers, okay?
Nice. Our age range is not that different. The only reason I was asking is because my shop started cutting parts for
Oh, I didn't-
Douglas / Boeing.
Okay,
I was just curious.
it was McAuto. that
Okay.
I worked with, so.
And
Not
thinking
quite
about
as-
education, I started out in more of a business school before I went on to a university, and it was all mostly hands-on. And I excelled. I'm a visual learner. That's why I luckily chose graphic and web design, but there's just so many different
Yeah.
preferences and how people learn as well, and I think that always needs to be considered. Yeah.
One other thing you maybe is a little bit interesting about me is I married a teacher.
That's right.
And tying in with what you just said, her thesis work was on multiple intelligences. So understanding that some kids are auditory, some kids are visual,
Yeah.
some kids are tactile,
That's very
and
important.
trying to understand,
Their
how do I
strengths.
how do I arrange
Bring that out.
a teaching scenario
Yeah.
syllabus for dealing with these various things, and that was one of the things she
Yeah.
tried to work into her program, which sort of tied in, unfortunately, with the fact the rise of in the 2000s, we had this rise of from No Child Left Behind to Teach to the Test, which became extremely onerous during the
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the problem with that is that kids were, instead of learning something, they were just, there was constant repetition and memorization. That's not really teaching.
Right.
But the schools were doing it because they wanted the kids to test well so that they would get their budgets.
There you go. There you have it.
Yeah.
The question: why are we doing this? Is this educating
Yeah.
our students? And I love the depiction of the fish trying to climb a tree. Have you guys seen that? It's just trying to state that just because you can't climb a tree doesn't mean you're any less. You weren't made to do that.
Oh.
So I mean, people
Makes
have
sense.
different skill sets.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
the bottom line there? Yeah. I work with a lot of developers. At some point, I had to learn how to code. That is not my strong suit. I can get through it. It's a really good thing to have as a background when you're communicating with people. But design is definitely where I excel. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for doing this tonight. I hope we can do this again. I think it really
too.
will help, for people to understand who we are, why we're running, and the things that we want. Maybe next time we can talk more about some of the things that we want to change in the district and how we plan on doing that. So,
I think
With
that's
that?
a great idea. Thank
okay,
you.
great.
Thanks,
No,
Jana,
thank you.
for inviting me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.